everybody, it's me, Margaret, and as you may know or may not know, I've been working on doll clothes and accessories, 18-inch doll clothes and accessories, that is, like American Girl. I'm in the process of working on this bed and making the bedding. I still have much more to do, but at night when I'm sitting in my chair and not in my craft room, I wanted something in my lap to do towards this goal, and so what I started was a granny rectangle afghan to go on the bed. Generally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of granny squares and piecing them together, never have been, but doing a granny square is actually so relaxing and therapeutic. And basically what this is one big giant granny rectangle. Why? Because beds are rectangular. They're just as easy as a granny square, but you start it a little bit differently so that you could have this rectangular effect in the beginning. Now you can see the rectangular pattern instead of a square, and I asked, many of you wanted to see a tutorial for how to get this started, and I'll go ahead and show you how to change colors and everything. Very simple, very quick, very easy, and this can be expounded upon to be any size. Keep going until you got the size you want. So let's look at the anatomy of this blanket before we get started with the tutorial. Basically, there's only two things you need to remember, and that's what to do on the sides and what to do on the corners. So let's look very closely, and you'll see that on the sides, it's basically a cluster of 3 double crochet and a chain 1, which makes the whole. So you do 1, 2, 3 double crochet, chain 1, 1, 2, 3 double crochet, chain 1, all on the sides. And then when you get to the corner, you're going to do 2 sets of the double crochets. 1, 2, 3, and then chain 2 for the corner. 1, 2, 3. So the corners are basically increases, and that makes it lie flat. And then you repeat this over and over and over again until you get the blanket the size you want. I'll put in the description box below a chart with common blanket sizes for you. Now, I'm a firm believer in knowing where you're going before you get in the car. So let's understand what we have to do for this setup, for this beginning. We're going to start with this drawing because sometimes yarn, it's a little bit difficult to understand what's taking place. And here it's easily drawn out so you can understand. All right, what we're creating are our 4 corners of the big rectangle by doing this crazy commotion down here. So this is the only time it's confusing. After that, you'll go into the sides and the corner. All right, here's the deal. We're going to start with 12 chains. And then we're creating 3 sets of double crochet. See them? 1, 2, 3 on each end. With our 2, these are the corners, our 2 chains here, 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 and here. So this will be corner 1, this will be corner 2, 3, and 4. And then this, of course, is just like a side. So when we chain our 12, we're going to do 3 sets. You see them? 3 sets into 1 chain. And you need to note that right here we have a pretend double crochet, and that happens a lot in crochet when you need to get up to the top in order to complete your next double crochet. Sometimes we just have to chain. Now there are other ways to do this, but for beginning purposes we're just going to do the old-fashioned basic chain method. Now the best thing about this blanket is you can use any yarn you want to and your favorite hook to go with that yarn. It doesn't matter. This happens to be a worsted weight. It's a Vanna's Choice, which is kind of a heavier worsted. And I did my doll blanket in this very thin, it's more of a sport weight right here because I figure dolls are small, so they need small yarn, right? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Start your project with a slip knot, just as you would any. And I do mine by taking my 2 fingers and I wrap it around once, twice, and then I go over once and I go over twice again. And there you go. You can do your slip knot any way you want to, and there's lots of different variations on that. Look them up on YouTube. All right, get your tail out of the way and begin with 12 chains. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then answer your phone. Alright, just to refresh our memories, we've got the chain 12 right here. And what we're about to do is crochet 2 double crochets in the 4th chain from the hook. And when we finish, we'll have a cluster of 3. So we'll do these 2, we'll chain 2, we'll do these 3, and we've created a corner. Alright, so what that looks like is we count back 4th chain from the hook, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we do our first double crochet, which is a yarn over, insert into that chain, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2, and that is a double crochet. And do it again, yarn over, insert into that same hole, yarn over, pull up 1, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2, and what we have created is a cluster of 3 double crochets. And because we're doing a corner, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2. Alright, and let's do another cluster in that same hole. So complete the first double crochet, then the second, then the third, and then we end with a chain 1 because we're on our way to work on the side. Now let's double check to make sure we're on track. Okay, we've got the chain, we've done this cluster, we've chained 2 for the first corner, and we've done this cluster. Funnily enough, we're going to get to this one, but it's going to be the last one that we do. So let's continue traveling on this direction. So now we're going to count 4 more chains. 1, 2, 3. Here's the 4th right here. Put 3 double crochet right into that chain. There's the first one. Boom. Now we're working on the second one into the same chain. And then the third one. And because we're working on a side, we always end with a chain 1. Now here we are, moving over to make the other corners. That's this last chain where the slip knot is. So let's put 1 cluster of 3 right there. 1, 2, 3, and because it's a corner, we chain 2. 1, 2. Okay, so let's see what we've got so far. Here's where we started over here. Here's the side right here in the middle, and now we're making this set, these 2 corners right here. This is our setup, and we're setting up for the rest of the blanket. So we just chained these 2 right here. So now we need to do another cluster of 3, a chain 2 for the other corner, another cluster of 3, chain 1 because we're traveling on to the side. Now wait, I'm holding it like this, but actually what we're doing is we're working along and we're turning our work like this as we go. And then we'll work like this. So time for the second cluster in that same chain. It's going to seem to be overloaded by the time we finish. There's the first double crochet, the second, and the third. And because we're doing that corner, we chain 2. 1, 2. Okay, and now we have to do that third set of double crochets. There's the first, the second, and the third. Because we're working on to the side, we do only a chain 1. Okay, so see how we flipped it over? We've got our 2 corners right there, just like our drawing. So now we're going to go right back into this chain and do a cluster of 3. 1, 2, and 3, because it's the side, chain 1. So started here, we went around here, we created these corners, we've done this one. So the only thing left to do is this last double crochet set and the chain 2 corner. And that set goes right into that same chain, that same hole. So 3 double crochet right here. 1, 2, and 3, and then we got to put that corner in with the 2 chains, 1 and 2. And we have finished the setup row. We've finished the first round, except for one little detail. Look, that's not joined. How do we join it? Alright, well, let's look. Remember that we have a fake double crochet right here, the chains that took us up. 1, 2, 3. There's that top of the chain 3. We're going to slip stitch right into that. So grab both of those stitches, yarn over and pull through. Boom, both of those loops. And it's completed. Looks just like our drawing. Now here's something worth noting. This yarn isn't too bad. It held everything in place. But sometimes when you're crocheting into this slip knot, it may grow and look really big and out of proportion. The simple fix for that is just to pull on your tail, on the yarn tail, and that will close the slip knot. Now you can design yours any way you want. What I did was 2 rows of one color, 2 rows of one color, 2 rows of one color. I changed colors each time. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate right now. But keep in mind that you can design yours any way. A very contemporary look right now would be to keep it all one color. So let me demonstrate what you do when you're staying in the same color, not changing to a new one. So we've just finished the slip stitch that joined the corner, the chain 2, to the top of this double crochet, which remember really is a fake double crochet. That's just a chain 3. And we always start a new row in a corner, but we've passed this corner already, right? See, our hook is over here. So what we need to do is creep over here in a sneaky way. We don't want to add any more stitches or anything. We're just going to get over there in a sneaky way. So this is where our last stitch was located. So let's put a slip stitch right here in the top of that double crochet, and that brings us right there. Now we can enter right here. So this is how you start a new row. Slip stitch into the hole, into that corner, and then chain 3. Do your fake double crochet. 1, 2, 3. Now how many double crochet go in a corner? We do 2 clusters. So here is the second double crochet of that first cluster. Here's the third double crochet. And then we do a chain 2 because it is a corner. And then do another cluster. For some reason my hands aren't sliding in the yarn this morning. And the third double crochet. And because we're approaching a side, we just chain 1. Okay, so here's a side. Do a cluster of 3 double crochet. And then of course you're on a side, so you end with a chain 1. So there's the second double crochet of that cluster, and whoops, here is the third, and a chain 1. And this is another side. So do another cluster. Chain 1, and now we're at a corner, and we know what to do in our corners. We do 2 clusters. That's 1, 2, 3, and chain 2 because it's a corner, and put that other group of 3. There's 1, 2, and 3, and we're no longer, once you do that second cluster, you're not considered in a corner anymore, so just chain 1. But now, boom, we're in another corner, so we do it again. So later this becomes so much easier because there's distance between your corners and it doesn't get confusing. So we're in this corner, so we chain 2 before we put in that second cluster. And the third, we're approaching the side, so we chain 1. Now continue on as you know what to do. When you get to the corner, do your little corner routine and I'll meet you back. Alright, so I just put in my corner. There's my chain 2 and I'm back around. I need to end this row, and we know that we do that with a slip stitch at the top of that chain 3. So just insert somewhere in there, yarn over and pull through both. Okay, so now let's say we want to change colors. What do? We creep over. Alright, so let's see, that one's right. I can do that one. We creep over with our slip stitches in the same color because we don't want it to be noticed. But this time when we insert into the corner space, instead of pulling up the original color, we're going to pull up our new color. So just drape it over your hook and just slip stitch it in like that. Okay? And then continue on with the pattern that you know happens on corners. So we start with that false, that fake double crochet, chain 3. And we make 2 double crochets for the first corner cluster. And we chain 2 for the corner, and then we do 3 for the second cluster. And we're approaching a side, so we chain 1. So it looks like that. Now, speaking of the way it looks, that is just sticking out like a sore thumb, isn't it? So what we need to do is reach in the back and pull. Okay, let's just make it nice and snug, and it kind of blends in to the rest of it right there. Now that's sticking out a little bit, so what do? Reach back here and give it a little tug. And doesn't that look nice? Okay, so we continue on in that fashion until your blanket is the size that you want. Now let's have a quick word about sewing in ends. That's come loose. I need to fix it. I'm not actually finished with this because even though the dimensions have reached the size that I need, I'm going to go 2 more colors because I want mine to end in a blue. I started in a blue, I want it to end in a blue to be kind of like a border. And speaking of that, some people like to put in a border around here that is solid and that doesn't have holes. So they'll put in, say, a row of half double crochet, or maybe single crochet, or maybe a combination of both. I don't want to do that. I like mine like this, so I will not be adding a border on there, but it's the same thing. You would just put a stitch in each stitch above if you want a border. But a word about sewing in ends. If you are changing colors, you're going to have a lot of ends, and I am not a fan of sewing my ends in as I go for the simple reason of if I come across a mistake, it's much easier to fix if you have not sewn in your ends. However, you can get a lot of raw ends flying around back here, and that bothers the stew out of me. So what I do is every, say, 3 or 4 color changes, I stop what I'm doing and I sew the ends in, and that way it just doesn't bother me flopping around back here. But that, of course, is a personal preference and has nothing to do with the finished project. Eventually, all the ends are going to be sewn in order to have a completed project done properly.
Now that you see how easy this is, let's talk about controlling the shape of your rectangle. Now, all these are rectangles by definition, but you can see how their shapes vary. And, surprise, surprise, these are all dimensions of common mattresses. The secret to controlling your rectangle shape is all in the length of your starting chain. Now let's pop over to Google Images and see some in action. So I typed Granny Rectangle Afghan in Google Images, and here's what I get. And you can see right off the bat, look how long that starting chain is. And over here we've got kind of a moderate looking one. I could scroll down. That's pretty, that's more moderate, I think, than that first one we saw. Look at that. It's like stained glass. That's kind of cool. This is the one that I did. Look, that's just like mine, isn't it? You have your corners over here. You have one set of sides, and then you have your corners again. Here's a very long one, and this one right there. How did that get in there? That's actually a granny square blanket. But you can see they all vary in starting chain lengths. So I hear you. You're saying, Margaret, how many starting chains do I make for my desired dimensions? Mikey of the Crochet Crowd shared this chart containing starting chain lengths, and I'll provide this handy link below. However, I'll caution you to view this only as a guide, because there's no way to guarantee the dimensions in this chart without providing the yarn, the hook size, and the gauge. Mikey's patterns only indicate any yarn you desire, and for hook size, he says to just use what's suggested on the yarn label. But these figures will get you in the right ballpark, which is a hugely helpful starting point. So thank you, Mikey, and I'll put this link in the description box. So that's all the info you need to make a successful granny rectangle afghan. And if you have any questions, put them in the comment section below, and I'll do my very best to answer them. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye.